He didn't raise his voice, he just opened the folder. On live television, Barack Obama exposed a financial scandal buried deep in Trump's presidency. What started as a calm interview ended with documents that could upend everything. The crowd went silent. Trump didn't. What did Obama reveal, and why is the GOP panicking behind closed doors? Before we get to this explosive moment, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe truth still matters, hit subscribe. We've got another jaw-dropping story coming tomorrow. It was supposed to be just another sit-down, a primetime special, a reflective look back on a presidency long admired. Cameras rolled as former President Barack Obama sat opposite the anchor of the nation's highest-rated political show. The lights were soft, the mood controlled. Americans tuned in expecting dignity, poise, and maybe a few stories from the past. What they got instead was a live detonation. Calmly, methodically, Obama leaned forward and said, "I wasn't going to say this, but I've seen the documents." Gasps didn't echo through the room because the studio was silent. But living rooms across America erupted in stunned silence. Obama didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture wildly. He simply opened a thin manila folder that had been sitting by his side the entire interview, untouched until now. With one smooth motion, he slid it across the table toward the host. The camera operator zoomed in just enough to catch his words. "This is not about politics. This is about what he did, in office, with your money." The host blinked. America blinked. For 5 full seconds, no one spoke. Then the segment cut to commercial, but the internet didn't. Clips of the moment flooded TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. The phrase "Obama folder" trended worldwide before the hour was over. Hashtags exploded. Obama's answers who went from trapdoor to trunk. By sunrise, Trump had surfaced unshaven, red-faced, and fuming in front of a group of hand-picked reporters outside Mar-a-Lago. His voice cracked as he pointed at the cameras. "It's a lie. It's a smear. Obama better lawyer up," he spat, jabbing his finger toward the sky like he was fighting gravity. "You're going to see what happens next. Believe me, this is not over." The reporters tried to press for details. What was in the folder? Was he confirming the allegations? But Trump refused to say. He pivoted, rambled, deflected. Then he stormed back into the mansion as aides blocked follow-up question. But it was too late. The clip of Obama's heating tone had already outpaced every defensive soundbite Trump offered. Overnight, political networks flipped their coverage. Fox News opened with, "Obama's bombshell. Truth or vendetta?" MSNBC called it, "The folder heard round the world." Across all platforms, one truth was becoming undeniable. Something had been revealed, and America wasn't going to let it go. Since leaving office, Barack Obama had chosen silence as his weapon. While many ex-presidents dipped in and out of the political spotlight, Obama mastered the art of stepping back without vanishing. His post-presidency image was deliberate, statesmanlike, unshaken, always composed. Whether he was unveiling portraits with grace or delivering commencement addresses laced with subtle warnings, he remained dignified, a moral compass for a nation swinging in wild ideological currents. But behind the camera flashes and book tours, he was watching. Watching as Donald Trump unraveled years of institutional norms with a tweet and a tantrum. Watching courts bend under partisan weight. Watching democracy buckle not with a bang, but with rolling headlines of corruption, chaos, and cruelty. Yet he never broke pathway, not publicly. Inside his post-presidency office in D.C., however, the tone was different. For months, some say even years, Obama had quietly gathered files. Not opposition research, not rumors, documents. Sworn testimony, paper trails. Signed approvals. Much of it had come to him unsolicited from career civil servants, inspectors general, and even former Trump officials who'd left in shame or fear. They trusted Obama with it. They knew he wouldn't leak recklessly. He would wait. He would verify. And he did. His closest aides described the shift with reverence. It wasn't anger, one longtime advisor said. It was a sense of duty, of knowing he was one of the last voices people trusted. Obama's inner circle knew the risk of stepping back into the fire. But after a meeting in early spring, where a watchdog group presented proof of a shell company tied to foreign money funneled through a Trump PAC, the line had been crossed. "That was the moment," the aide recalled. He closed the folder and said, "That's it. I'm not waiting anymore." The world didn't see that moment. They didn't hear the quiet frustration in his voice, but they felt it when he appeared on live television and opened the same folder. It wasn't political vengeance. It was accountability. The man known for his poise was finally breaking his silence, not with volume, but with verified truth. He didn't need to yell. The documents would speak louder than rage ever could. Child O'Brien never really lost the stage. While Obama retreated into quiet leadership, Trump dug in, amplifying chaos as his brand. In the wake of his 2020 election loss, he didn't concede. He declared war. On media, on prosecutors, on anyone who dared suggest accountability. He teased another run for office not with strategy, but with threats. Rallies became rituals. His truth was whatever he shouted loudest. And his enemies? They were anyone who told him no. Behind the scenes, though, the machinery was darker than ever. Former campaign officials signed ironclad NDAs. Shell packs surfaced in obscure financial filings, routing millions into vaguely defined consulting fees. In private, aides watched money shift between accounts that barely passed legal muster. Lawsuits were settled before depositions could be scheduled. One former Trump Organization executive described it bluntly. He moved money like a guy expecting a spotlight he couldn't escape. And that spotlight had a name: Barack Obama. Trump mocked him constantly in public, called him weak, irrelevant, washed up. But privately, he was obsessed. He'd ask aides whether Obama had spoken out, whether he was writing another book, whether he still held security clearance. The fear was never about legacy. It was about exposure. There was one scandal in particular, a series of wire transfers from a super PAC that had raised eyebrows at the IRS. When auditors flagged a pattern linking the funds to offshore accounts connected to a hotel deal in Eastern Europe, a quiet panic gripped Trump's legal team. It wasn't just bad optics, it was potentially criminal. But no one outside the room knew. Trump heard whispers that documents were making their way to Obama's office. He dismissed them at first, laughing it off. What's he gonna do? Send a tweet? But that bravado faded when networks began speculating about a primetime Obama interview. Suddenly, Trump's team scrambled, calling allies at networks, sending cease and desist letters preemptively, pressuring GOP leaders to speak out. One senior advisor recalled the shift. He wasn't afraid of prosecutors. He thought he could outmaneuver them. But Obama? He knew if Obama talked, people listen. Trump's fear wasn't just about what Obama might reveal. It was about how. Because unlike him, Obama didn't need spectacle. He didn't need spin. He had documents. He had trust. And worst of all for Trump, he had credibility. And when that folder opened on national television, all the noise in the world couldn't drown it out. The CNN studio was dimly lit, bathed in a muted blue hue, the air thick with anticipation. A primetime special, teased for a week, had drawn one of the largest live audiences in years. Millions were watching. Some were curious, some nervous, others just waiting for Barack Obama to do what he'd never done before. Speak out, not with coded restraint or gentle rebuke, but with facts, names, and receipts. When he finally appeared, he wasn't flanked by handlers or softened by presidential pomp. He sat alone, calm, unflinching. America leaned in. The host opened with a cautious tone. "Mr. President, you've remained relatively quiet about Donald Trump. Why break that silence now?" Obama didn't flinch. "Because this isn't about politics anymore. It's about theft. It's about the public trust. And the paper trail is real." He reached beside him, picked up a plain manila folder and placed it gently on the table like a slow-moving storm. "I wasn't going to say this," he added, "but I've seen the documents. I've verified them. And the American people deserve to know what he did, in office, with their money." The host looked visibly stunned. Are you saying you have direct evidence of financial misconduct during Trump's presidency? Obama nodded slowly. I'm saying federal disaster relief funds, money meant for hurricane victims, wildfire recovery, and emergency housing, were funneled through shell companies that trace back to properties owned by Donald J. Trump, properties in Florida, in New Jersey, in Scotland. He paused. It's one thing to grift donors. It's another to steal from the people you swore to protect. He opened the folder and slid the contents forward. On camera, the network zoomed in. Wire transfers from FEMA sub-accounts to a real estate holding company with no listed employees. Invoices stamped, emergency renovations on golf resorts. A typed memo from a White House aide confirming Trump's personal approval. And at the bottom, a signature. The camera cut to the host, whose hands briefly trembled as he held up the memo. We verified this signature with our own analysts before air, the host added. This is not a forgery. Obama leaned forward slightly. The truth doesn't need theatrics. It just needs daylight. This is that daylight. For 30 seconds, there was no sound. Just the close-up of a man who once embodied restraint, now holding a nation's secrets in his hands. Viewers flooded social media. Did that just happen? Is this real? Obama brought the folder. On split screens across the country, networks cut between the interview and live reaction panels. Some analysts sat in silence, others whispered over camera. The hashtag Obama folder trended within 4 minutes. Even outlets that had long ignored corruption stories were forced to pivot. What they had just seen couldn't be spun. It was too specific, too detailed, too damning. And Obama? He wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He simply closed the now empty folder and folded his hands. We can argue about politics, he said, but not about receipts. The lights at Mar-a-Lago were still on when the clip aired. Donald Trump was halfway through dessert, flanked by loyal aides and favored donors, when the room fell silent. All eyes turned to the massive TV mounted above the fireplace. Obama's voice echoed through the gilded hall. I wasn't going to say this, but I've seen the documents. Trump froze, fork in midair, dessert untouched. At first he scoffed. He's bluffed, Trump muttered, waving it off. But then the camera zoomed in on the signature. His signature. The room stiffened. Nobody breathed. One aide slowly backed out of the dining area, texting furiously. Another flipped open a laptop. Within minutes, the video had racked up millions of views. Networks ran it on loop. Cable pundits were losing their minds in real time, and Trump's hands, now visibly shaking. He stood abruptly. Get me a camera. Right now. His team scrambled, and within 45 minutes, the former president was standing behind a makeshift podium, hastily thrown together on the marble steps of his estate. The press, tipped off by a leak from inside, swarmed the grounds. Lights flicked on, mics extended, phones recorded. Trump's face was flush with rage, his hair disheveled. He didn't read from a statement. He didn't have one. He launched directly into a tirade. This is a hit job. A disgusting, disgraceful hit job from a failed president who's jealous. Jealous that I'm still the voice of the people, he shouted. Those documents are fake. Deep state trash. They've been edited, doctored, whatever you want to call it. Total witch hunt. And it starts with Obama. A reporter shouted, Sir, are you denying the signature is yours? Trump snapped back. I sign hundreds of things. I don't remember half of them. They probably took something from the White House and stamped my name on it. Someone else asked, Did FEMA money go to your golf resorts? Trump hesitated, just for a second, but it was long enough. Fake question, next, he barked. This is all theater. Obama better lawyer up, because we're coming for him with defamation, with fraud, with everything we've got. The internet exploded. Within minutes, Obama better lawyer up trended beside a Trump meltdown. TikTok flooded with edited clips of Trump pacing, red-faced, sweating under the hot Florida lights. His voice cracked, his gestures wild. People compared him to Nixon on the eve of resignation, unhinged, unraveling, isolated in his own fortress of gold. Even Fox News, typically quick to rally behind him, was split. Laura Ingraham seemed stunned. "This isn't good," she admitted on air. "This isn't just noise anymore." Meanwhile, Sean Hannity insisted, "Obama's running a coup through CNN." The base fractured. Some cheered Trump's fight. Others looked at the folder and couldn't deny what they'd seen. Receipts don't shout, but they echo. By 3 a.m., Trump was back inside Mar-a-Lago, pacing. He hadn't eaten. His lawyers were on speaker, arguing among themselves. "We need a countersuit," one said. "We need a distraction," said another. Trump just kept mumbling to himself. He had the damn folder. By sunrise, the broadcast clip had already reached over 80 million views across platforms. But it wasn't just the viral replay of Obama sliding the folder across the table that captivated the nation. It was what came next. Within hours, major outlets were racing each other to verify every detail, and they weren't coming up empty. The Washington Post dropped the first bombshell. The document Obama presented was real. Signed in 2019, it detailed an internal contract rerouting FEMA emergency funds through a shell company listed under the name Clear Skies Holdings. The address? A mailbox inside a strip mall in West Palm Beach, less than 2 miles from a Trump-owned golf resort. The money? $32,800,000, 0 cents. ProPublica followed next, publishing a deep dive within the day. Their investigation tracked the money trail from the Treasury's disaster relief account into Clear Skies Holdings, and then, days later, into a trust tied to Trump International Holdings, masked under 4 layers of corporate entities. Their headline, "Disaster Profiteering: How Relief Money Landed at Mar-a-Lago." CNN broke from standard programming to run a rolling panel. Legal experts, economists, and former FEMA directors lined up back to back. One former Bush administration official called it a historic abuse of federal authority for private gain. Anderson Cooper, usually reserved, didn't hold back. "We're not looking at political rivalry anymore. This is criminal exposure." Social media turned into a courtroom. Users clipped Obama's quote, "This isn't about politics. This is about what he did with your money," and paired it with headlines from The Atlantic, Politico, and Reuters. Memes exploded. One showed Obama calmly sipping water while a Fox News chyron below read, "Trump made FEMA putties to him himself?" Another showed a photo of Trump yelling, with the caption, "When the receipts are printed in black and white?" Even right-leaning outlets were shaken. The Wall Street Journal cautiously confirmed the legitimacy of the shell company network. The signatures are authentic. The routing numbers match federal records. The timeline aligns with Hurricane Laura's response delays. The editorial board refrained from taking a side, but their lead story was titled simply, "The folder is real." At the White House press briefing, President Biden's press secretary declined to comment directly, but reporters wouldn't let up. One asked, "Does the president believe former President Trump should be investigated?" Another asked, "Has the Department of Justice been briefed on the Obama disclosure?" The silence said enough. The final twist came from a surprising source, Fox News anchor Bret Baier. Known for measured conservatism, Baier opened his segment by holding up a printed copy of the document. "I've reviewed it," he said, "and unless this is the most elaborate hoax in American political history, Trump has a serious problem." Obama, meanwhile, remained silent. No interviews, no statements. The only update came from his senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, who posted a single sentence on X, "Truth doesn't flinch." That phrase caught fire. By evening, protesters had gathered outside Capitol buildings in 6 states. Not screaming partisans, but citizens holding up photocopies of the document, wrapped in folders of their own. In black marker, across the front, they'd written 3 words, "We saw it." And across the country, one question thundered louder than all others. If this is what one folder revealed, what else has been buried? The clip of Barack Obama sliding a folder across the CNN interview table didn't just ripple through the internet, it detonated. Within hours, Obama with receipts was trending in 97 countries. TikTok creators stitched their stunned reactions alongside the footage, cutting between the calm tone of Obama's delivery and Trump's erratic midnight rant. One viral post showed Obama quietly saying, "This isn't personal, it's civic," while overlaid text read, "When your teacher finally snaps and brings the emails." Across classrooms in swing states and inner cities alike, civics teachers replaced that week's lesson plan with a moment of living history. "We're watching how checks and balances actually work," one Georgia teacher said, playing the CNN clip for a senior government class. In Arizona, a high school debate team rewrote their semester topic overnight to ask, "Should ex-presidents hold currently accountable?" The quiet power of Obama's move wasn't just that it exposed alleged financial corruption. It challenged a nation to define who still gets to speak truth in a post-truth era. Late-night shows pounced, but even their comedy felt reverent. Stephen Colbert titled his monologue, "POTUS versus Petulance," comparing Obama's composure to a seasoned teacher handling a screaming toddler. Seth Meyers, more biting, opened with, "Trump called it fake, the GAO called it damning, and Obama? He didn't even call it anything. He just slid it across the table." Audiences didn't just laugh, they leaned in. Across both comedy and commentary, one thing became clear. The country wasn't reacting to volume anymore. It was reacting to verification. On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow opened her primetime analysis with a slow pan over the folder Obama had brought. The stamped seals, the embedded financial trails, the matching signatures. "This isn't speculation," she said. "This is what happens when silence finally decides to speak." Fox News, initially dismissive, scrambled to reframe. Tucker Carlson's substitute host claimed the documents were conveniently timed. But even then, their tone was cautious, not combative. The gravity of what had been revealed was too thick to spin in one night. Moderate Republicans, particularly those eyeing Senate re-election, began to backpedal. Lindsey Graham, asked on the Hill about the broadcast, muttered, "If what the president said is true, we'll need to look into it." Susan Collins offered her go-to line, "I'm concerned." But the most significant break came from Senator Lisa Murkowski, who tweeted, "Facts still matter." That's not a partisan position, it's a civic one. That tweet alone was liked over 3 million times. Even international leaders weighed in. Germany's chancellor praised the moment as a reminder of democratic dignity, while Canada's prime minister retweeted the clip with the caption, "Leadership isn't loud, sometimes it just brings the receipts." From The Hague to Nairobi, foreign news outlets ran primetime specials examining how a former U.S. president had set off the largest by-barn accountability conversation in a decade, with a folder, not a fist. Inside households, dinner table conversations turned tense. Children asked their parents, "Is what he said true?" And many had no easy answer. But across age groups, the emotional impact was undeniable. Obama didn't need to raise his voice, because the weight of the facts raised it for him. His silence had been strategic, but now that it was broken, it was echoing louder than Trump's daily outbursts ever had. And in the middle of it all, Obama disappeared again. No press tour, no follow-up tweet. Just a single statement from his office. Truth doesn't need to yell. It just needs to be heard. With that, the ball was no longer in his court. It was in America's. By dawn the next morning, investigative journalists were already elbow-deep in the documents Barack Obama had placed before the nation. At first glance, the folder seemed almost too clean, meticulously tabbed, footnoted, and time-stamped. But by midday, it became clear that what Obama had revealed wasn't just a snapshot. It was the beginning of a trail. And the trail led straight into the heart of Trump's post-presidency empire. ProPublica was first to hit publish. In a sweeping breakdown titled, "The Shell That Hid the Storm," they traced one of the contracts Obama exposed. A $38 million 0-cents federal disaster relief grant awarded in 2019 to a Delaware-based nonprofit. The organization, allegedly created to help hurricane survivors in Puerto Rico, had quietly rerouted over $9 million 0 cents into a Florida construction firm. That firm, owned by a holding company. And that holding company, directly linked to the Trump Organization through a series of offshore filings in the Cayman Islands. The receipts were no longer metaphorical. Journalists found construction permits, renovation invoices, and security contracts, all aligning with the exact timeline that Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort underwent an unexplained multi-million-dollar stormproofing upgrade. NBC News confirmed that federal grant funds were disbursed within 48 hours of the resort filing for its construction permits. CNN independently verified email chains showing the nonprofit's board directors receiving personal bonuses within weeks of the money transfer. But the most damning confirmation didn't come from media, it came from government. The Government Accountability Office, GAO, issued a quiet press release just 24 hours after the broadcast. The documents presented by President Obama appear to match originals obtained during a 2023 inquiry. A formal audit has been opened. The phrase, "match originals" sent shockwaves through the Capitol. It wasn't just a revelation, it was institutional validation. Within hours, even conservative legal scholars were weighing in. Former federal prosecutor David French wrote on Substack, "This could come from Nixon's desk. If the evidence continues to hold, it points to abuse of federal funds for private gain and possibly wire fraud." On Fox News, Judge Andrew Napolitano, no stranger to criticizing Trump, stated plainly, "If that folder holds what it appears to, we're not just talking about corruption, we're talking about..." More documents emerged. A second shell nonprofit was uncovered, this one linked to a Trump-branded golf course in North Carolina. Like clockwork, it too had received emergency infrastructure funds and listed vague retention basin upgrades as its purpose. Photos showed new luxury locker rooms and a spa wing completed during the same period. When asked for comment, the Trump organization issued a 3-line email. "These are baseless attacks. We did nothing wrong." The Wall Street Journal, normally restrained in tone, ran a front-page headline that read simply, "Receipts match reality." In a companion editorial, they wrote, "We warned that too much silence from respected figures could destabilize civic trust. This week, silence spoke, and it spoke with documents." That editorial went viral not because of its content, but because of its timestamp. It was published the same morning Trump launched into another rage post. Obama's folder was a fake folder. The deep state made it. Stay strong, America. But America wasn't buying it, at least not the way they used to. Independent analysts on YouTube and Twitter live streams began doing breakdowns of PAC spending, drawing red lines and arrows across spreadsheets in real time. Viewers flooded the comments. "Why is nobody in jail yet? Follow the grants. This is bigger than Watergate." The phrase, "Obama receipts arc," began trending, as if the country had suddenly slipped into a political saga where facts, finally, had a starring role. And through it all, Obama remained invisible, at least physically. No follow-ups, no morning shows, no rallying cries, just a folder, just a trail. And now, a nation tracing every step of it. By Thursday evening, the tone inside the Republican National Committee's headquarters had shifted from denial to dread. Major donors, previously insulated by Trump's bravado and spin, began calling senior staff with a single demand: distance us. The documents President Obama revealed had survived every test, verified by media, confirmed by the GAO, traced by watchdogs. And worst of all, behind the scenes, GOP megadonors like Ken Griffin and Miriam Adelson privately informed party leaders they would be pausing future contributions. "This isn't politics," one donor's aide was quoted in Politico. "This is reputational suicide." Super PACs quietly reallocated ad funding. A prominent Senate candidate from Ohio pulled a scheduled Trump rally, citing logistical conflicts. It wasn't logistics, it was survival. Inside Mar-a-Lago, the mood turned volcanic. Trump spent hours pacing. He screamed at aides, threatened legal action against media outlets, and demanded to know why that damn folder hadn't been preemptively discredited. When one staffer reminded him that they'd never seen its contents before the CNN broadcast, Trump exploded. "Obama is jealous. He always was. He's got nothing. Just wait. I'll drop the real bomb." But the real bomb never came. Instead, what arrived was an avalanche. RNC digital staff leaked internal Slack threads showing widespread panic. One strategist wrote, "We're getting torched in the suburbs. Millennials and independents think Obama just saved democracy." A regional director added, "We're bleeding. He didn't yell, he didn't gloat, he just showed proof." Even Trump's own base began to fracture. MAGA influences split into warring factions, some doubling down on deep state conspiracies, others pleading for fresh blood in 2028. Fox News, ever the weather vane, struggled to calibrate its tone. Tucker Carlson's substitute host opened with a surreal segment blaming the weaponization of folders. But within hours, even they couldn't ignore it. The shell corporations existed, the grants were real, and the names on the signatures belonged to people within Trump's tightest financial circle. It wasn't theory anymore, it was evidence. The final blow came not from Democrats, but from within Trump's own ranks. Mick Mulvaney, his former acting chief of staff, gave a rare interview on MSNBC. "I saw some of these transactions," he admitted. "Back then, we were told it was campaign overflow money. I didn't know it was federal funds. If Barack Obama's showing that proof now, he's doing what Congress should have done years ago." That clip went viral. It wasn't a takedown. It was a quiet confession, and it landed like a sledgehammer. And yet, through the chaos, Obama remained silent. No follow-up statements, no press conferences, no social media posts. Only his original words, clipped and captioned across millions of screens. "This isn't personal, this is civic." His calm demeanor now screamed louder than Trump's fury. It became a cultural mirror. One man yelling into the void, the other letting facts do the talking. That contrast became the collapse. Late Friday night, Trump posted another barrage of alt-caps rants on Truth Social, calling Obama a criminal, a fraud, and a socialist puppet. But even his most loyal followers noticed something new. Fear. The bravado was cracking, the empire was wobbling, and the country, watching quietly, clearly, and no longer fooled. Because this time, the receipts spoke first, and the silence afterward was deafening. The clip of Barack Obama sliding a folder across the table didn't just go viral. It reshaped America's cultural psyche. On TikTok, users from every background remixed the moment with soundtracks ranging from gospel choirs to cinematic booms. The phrase "Obama with receipts" appeared on mugs, hoodies, and graduation caps. College students quoted him in commencement speeches. High school civics teachers rewrote their lesson plans to include the segment, calling it a modern masterclass in democratic accountability. For a generation raised on noise, Obama's silence, his calm pause before stating, "This isn't about politics. This is about what he did with your money," became the loudest quote of the year. Memes flooded the internet, but they weren't mocking. They were reverent. One viral video juxtaposed Obama calmly sipping water with Trump shouting at reporters the next morning, and the caption read, "Power whispers, panic screams." Late-night comedians didn't even have to write punchlines. They just played the clips. The nation was laughing, but beneath the humor was a sober recognition that something had shifted. For the first time in years, the cultural divide wasn't about red versus blue. It was about calm truth versus manic distortion. Obama had recentered the axis of credibility, and millions were listening. Across suburban homes, church basements, and campus rallies, people began echoing a new mantra. That folder changed everything. Military veterans who once hesitated to criticize Trump began organizing town halls around transparency. Suburban moms, a powerful voting bloc, posted side-by screenshots of the broadcast and wrote things like, "This is what leadership looks like." One influencer tweeted, "I watched that clip with my 12-year-old son. He said, 'I want to be like him.' And for the first time in a long time, I cried for the right reasons." The merch came fast. Shirts read, "I don't yell, I just prove." Coffee mugs quoted, "The truth doesn't flinch." Even barbershops and nail salons played the clip on loop, with one barber in Atlanta saying, "We've watched every political scandal in here, but this one felt like justice." Artists painted murals of Obama holding a folder in one hand and the Constitution in the other. Even international headlines reflected the shift. The Guardian called it, "The truth bomb heard around the world," while France's Le Monde simply said, "La dignité américaine." In an era of misinformation fatigue, where shouting dominated headlines, Obama's restraint became a cultural reset, and it wasn't about him personally. It was about a moment that told people they weren't crazy for wanting clarity, for expecting accountability, for craving a leader who didn't need to scream to be heard. It became more than a political event. It became a generational mirror. The political shockwaves from Obama's televised folder drop didn't take days. They hit within hours. Capitol Hill lit up with bipartisan murmurs, aides rushing to draft statements before the momentum outran them. For once, both Democrats and a handful of wary Republicans found themselves aligned, not on party loyalty, but on survival. Senator Lindsey Graham, clearly uncomfortable yet forced to acknowledge the facts, told reporters, "If what President Obama presented is accurate, we may be looking at one of the most significant misuses of federal emergency funds in modern history." Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer immediately called for a bipartisan panel to investigate the funneling of disaster relief dollars through shell companies linked to Trump's properties. By midday, 4 members of the House Oversight Committee, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, issued a joint statement requesting hearings and document preservation orders from the Office of Management and Budget. The statement avoided naming Trump directly, but its tone was unmistakable. No one is above the public trust. Cable news cut between live footage of subpoenas being prepared and clips of the Obama broadcast, treating it not as commentary, but as evidence. Meanwhile, Trump's base attempted to rally. Truth Social posts exploded with claims of forgery, sabotage, and Obama's revenge tour. But the fury was quieter this time, diluted by the weight of receipts. Trump's approval ratings, already weakened by months of legal exposure, nosedived. An overnight Gallup poll showed a staggering 17-point drop among independent voters. More shocking, a 6-point drop among Republicans under 40. Young conservatives on Reddit and X began posting threads like, "Okay, what if the problem is real?" Right-wing radio hosts were split, while others, like a stunned Glenn Beck, admitted, "We're not ready for the blowback if this gets deeper, and it looks like it will." In the back rooms of power, the whisper campaign began. Would Obama endorse someone, or is he considering coming back? While legally barred from a 3rd term, the fantasy was less about legality and more about longing. Democrats whispered about a kingmaker role. Republicans quietly worried about the electoral shadow Obama now cast. Even candidates in swing states found themselves adjusting stump speeches. A gubernatorial hopeful in Michigan opened a rally with, "I stand for accountability. No matter who you are, no matter what party." The crowd roared. The pivot had begun. By week's end, congressional subpoenas were flying. A special counsel appointment loomed. Trump's legal team scrambled to anticipate new disclosures. Former aides began lawyering up. Meanwhile, Barack Obama remained silent, offering no follow-up, no rebuttal, no interviews. Just the folder, the facts, and the quiet storm he had calmly ignited. In that vacuum of noise, the political machine wasn't just reacting, it was finally reckoning. The camera lingers in slow motion, Barack Obama's hand, smooth and unshaking, sliding that manila folder across the polished interview table. No raised voice, no dramatic flourish, just the click of paper hitting wood and a nation's breath caught in its throat. Cut 2. Trump, his face red, lips curled, pointing at a cluster of microphones outside Mar-a-Lago. He's shouting, pacing, sweat glinting beneath the Florida sun. Flashback to Obama's words. This is not about politics. This is about what he did, in office, with your money. Back to the studio. The image of that folder. Plain, silent, undeniable. Centered in the shot, now etched into America's collective memory. It wasn't just a political moment. It was a cultural rupture, where yelling had once drowned out substance. Quiet proof now echoed louder than noise. Students wrote essays about it. Veterans nodded with respect. Mothers told their kids, "That's what truth looks like." The narrator speaks softly but firmly. In an age of outrage, one voice delivered facts and shook the foundations of power. Footage rolls of bipartisan hearings, of citizens marching not in anger, but with signs that read, "We deserve the truth," and "Receipts over rhetoric." A generational shift didn't just begin, it accelerated. Obama's final words replay one more time, clipped from the interview and now legendary. "I wasn't loud. I was just right." If that moment moved you, if the facts still mean more to you than volume, then this is your place. Subscribe now. Because the louder they yell, the more we'll keep listening to the quiet facts.